Okay, and now we're going to have that 15-second delay that I warned you about as we stream over to meet our mighty mystery fam. All right, and we are live. Welcome, mighty mystery fans. I'm your on-air host, Sarah DeVello, and I could not be more thrilled today to host Lynn Truss, author of Murder by Milk Bottle. Lynn, welcome to Mighty Mysteries. Tell us about your book.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, it is the third book in the series, and which are called the Constable Twitten Mysteries, as you can see on the figure, and set in Brighton on the south coast of England in the 1950s. And they're comic. I hope, sincerely hope they're funny, and yeah, they involve some inept police, and they usually have quite rattling along plots and quite a lot of bloodshed, but we don't dwell on it.
Which is the best way to deal with bloodshed. I am reading it, and I have to say it is very funny. It is in a dry, witty, incredibly clever way. I absolutely love it. So I just want to welcome everyone on Facebook. Welcome, Mighty Mystery fans. So if you've been here before, you know how it works. And if you're new, here's how it works. This is your time to talk to Lynn, the amazing Lynn Truss, and ask her anything you want about her writing, about her book, about mysteries, about her incredible career as a journalist, as a writer, as an author. This is your time. My partner in crime, pun intended, Margaret Pinard, my fellow author and Mighty Blazer, will be managing things on Facebook. So just type your questions right in the comments and we'll get them right over to Lynn. I want to welcome Darlene. Welcome Karen. Karen saying hi. Darlene says, this is such a cute cover. She loves the cow. So Lynn, it is such a cute cover. Tell us about this cover because it's so cute.
I'm loving the cover. The thing is that that's the British cover as well, and the previous two books in the American editions were quite pulp fiction-y and quite dark and very witty, you know, but they weren't sort of sunny, or they didn't show Brighton particularly well. And so I'm so pleased that for this one they've gone for the same cover as the British one, which does have a scene of the pavilion, which is the building behind, with cows, because in 1957 it turned out in the summer they promoted milk production to such a degree that they actually did have a herd of cows. I expect a small herd, but in front of the pavilion, in the pavilion gardens. And so I couldn't resist that as an idea. Also, you'll notice there's on the back of the cow, there's a seagull sitting on the back of the cow, and that is the sort of symbol that's on all the books in the British editions. There's always this very larky, I don't know why it's funny, but it's a funny seagull, and it's slightly too big usually, and it's just become a bit of the symbol. And actually on the cover, on the raven is the imprint here, and usually they have a little raven on the spine, but for my books they have the seagull. So it's been really sweet. Yeah, no, on yours it'll just say Bloomsbury because it's.
But you have
it's
this
not...
nice milk.
Yeah,
bottle.
the milk bottle. That's so funny. I mean, I think they've been very wittily designed, and I'm very pleased about it. And it is just, I think it sort of sets the tone. It sets the tone for the book.
You're going to have a fun romp. You're going to have a fun, clever, witty, good time. Now, was this the first cover, Lynn, or did you have to work to refine it?
No, it was the first cover. They've been very good. I think I live near Brighton, and they're set in Brighton, and I think it's possibly a Brighton artist. I haven't met them yet, but I'd love to, because they obviously do know Brighton and have a very good rapport with the subject matter. So far I've loved every cover first go. So that's really lovely.
That's really lovely.
I know it's unusual, isn't it?
And somewhat unusual. Yes, and I totally agree. Thank you for pointing that out, Darlene. Now tell us about the title, Murder by Milk Bottle. Was that the first title did it arrive as a stroke of genius, or was this number 101? I mean, tell us about the story of the title.
Well, I think I didn't start with the title, but people are murdered in milk bottles very early on. So in the first chapter, so, you know, it was a possibility. And it was, I think, when I was about a third of the way into it, half of the way into it, my editor got in touch and said, any chance of a title yet? And I said, well, is it too awful to say Just Murder by Milk Bottle? And she said, oh, I think it is a bit sort of obvious. Well, it's a bit sort of too larky, a bit too silly. And then she just told it to some people and they always laughed. And she just thought, oh, all right then. Because people always thought, oh, that's funny. So so I'm very, very pleased with it. It does, it does present what the book is like, I suppose.
I love that. Welcome, Joanne, and everyone else who's watching. And it's funny because, and some of our audience, and I know Karen at least was with us earlier when I had the pleasure of interviewing Anthony Horowitz, your fellow Englishman, and he was saying that it's actually quite interesting to notice that when you're reading a murder mystery, you feel safe within the covers of the book. Whereas if you were outside and you saw someone get murdered, you'd be horrified and disgusted and withdrawal and just, that would be so violent and awful. But what's interesting is that when you're within the covers of a book, you feel safe because you know that there's going to be a crime. You know that there's going to be justice. You know that you're going to get the closure that you need, the experience, a full, complete experience. And I feel like that's what it is. That's what I love about mysteries.
Yeah, they're very comforting. They're comforting in a really scary world. I think people will turn to them even more because there is a resolution, and that, and what you always have actually, which is what you would love to have in real life, is that intelligence solves things. And actually, of course, in real life, you can be as intelligent as you like, and intelligence will not solve the problems of the world. It doesn't seem to, but usually in crime, you just have a super clever person who spots things, who makes the connections, and the idea that everything that's done leaves a clue in some way that can be followed up, that you can work things backwards to what happened. This is what happened, and it's the most comfort. I think though that sentence is the most comforting of all. So this is what happened, and I actually have. I mean, I've done all sorts of writing, but in these books, I have a sort of authorial voice, and it is quite confident. It is a voice that you can trust. You know that I will solve this and I will make sure that you understand when you get to the end. So it's a sort of double confidence boost, I think, when the authorial voice is so powerful.
I totally agree. And thank you for explaining it so well. And Anissa is saying she resonates with this. She gave us all these purple hearts. Thank you, Anissa. We all resonate with that, right? And I didn't really understand until today why that was. I thought, why am I comforted by murder? Is there something wrong with me? am I quite twisted and dark? Possibly. But that's why, because I like to know that there is an answer, there's a solution, that, and to try to work it out. So thank you for explaining it. Thank you for explaining it so beautifully. And I think you're right. Your voice is authoritative. Is it authoritative? Now I'm paranoid about my grammar.
Yes, I think it's authoritative. Yes.
And I feel safe in your hands, in your professional hands. I know that this is going to work out, but I want to see where it goes. And so it's so delightful. I just want to remind our audience, you can ask Lynn anything you want about her book, about her writing, anything at all, or the cover, anything. So feel free to get those questions going. I know it always takes me a minute or two to think of one, so I have to share just some of the incredible praise that this book has garnered. Lynn earned a starred review from Publishers Weekly, and that is not easy. Publishers Weekly raving, this is outstanding in her ability to blend crime and farce. Truss is in a class of her own. Wow, congratulations, Lynn.
Thank you.
And Kirk is saying that you recreate both the ingenious appeal and the formulaic limitations of Golden Age puzzlers. Absolutely incredible. So tell us, what is it like, and how do you do that? How do you write a book that puts you in a class, class of your own.
I don't know how literally I should take that, but that I'm in a class
Quite
of my
literally.
own. But it's very lovely someone should say so. I mean, usually, actually, what reviewers try to do is say way other things, draw analogies, you know, with other art forms, with comedy or something. They say this is like the Marx Brothers crossed with so and so. So for somebody to say, you know, not to bother to do that and to say you're in a class of your own is rather lovely, because I think it is, I have a lot of influences on me, I'm sure, but I'm not trying to cross anything with anything else. I am trying to do something original. So I'm very, very pleased when that happens. I don't know how to explain it, but I do write partly to entertain myself, and I think that's probably the secret of it all. And I obviously like a certain kind of joke, a certain kind of character development, a certain kind of relationship between characters. I love writing the dialogue, particularly because I you know, I've written plays and stuff, and I really, that's my favorite thing, is when things are moved on by conversation, by, you know, and the way you feel, you know, the characters so well that you can't wait to see what they say to each other. So those scenes, as it were, are always terribly important to me. And I found that writing, what was so lovely writing these books is so far is that, you know, what I do, and I'm sure it's not best practice, is that I begin with various strands, you know, in this, we have 3 murders at the beginning of very different people. We don't know what they have in common, except that they've been murdered by milk with milk bottles. So there's someone who's got a grudge that involves milk, possibly, who is killing them all. But apart from that, we don't know. And of course, I don't know when I start. I have no idea. I just set it off, and then, of course, you know, and I develop things, and then I go back in time to explain who people are, and I, you know, because every time I run up against something that I think I don't know enough about this, I then decide to find out more about this, and I go back and I explain it to myself. So there's a certain amount of whistling in the dark that goes on, or, you know, while I'm working. I think there's a famous line, isn't there? I never remember who it is who said it, but that most writers can see only, it's like driving on a dark road at night, and you can only see as far as the end of the headlights, and you just, you know, keep thinking, well, I can see that far, so I can do the next 1,500 words or something, and then I can see that far, so I keep going, and all the time in the back of your mind you're working out how this is all going to come together. So basically you set off loads of strands and then start folding them in until you've got the thing complete at the end. And there's a certain amount of nerve required just to keep going.
Oh.
And of course, you know, that's not what, I mean, obviously once it's worked, you can go back and make sure that you have done it properly and that you haven't left anything left over. But generally they have, you know, these plots do work out, but it is an act of faith, and there is a sort of, I can't start off with knowing the answer, because I would give it away. I'd be too excited. I'd tell people on page 2 and then I wouldn't have a book. So I really have to keep myself in the dark to a certain extent. And looking back sometimes on the notes I've made as I've gone along, where I'm saying, so did so, you know, and I've got completely, you know, I have moved on so far from that silly idea that, you know, so it is a sorry, I'm burbling, but it is a process, and it's hard to explain. It is hard to explain, but it is just about setting off enough things with enough potential, and lots of interest and lots of period interest, because they are set in the 50s and I love all that.
Yeah.
So, and then I have to draw it all together. Anyway, sorry.
No, I love this. And we have so many fabulous questions pouring in, and I promise you I will get to all of them. But this is so fascinating to hear about your process. Karen is saying she loves hearing about your writing process, as do I. Thank you, Karen. And I'm just wondering, and I'm asking for a friend, and the friend is me. When you're going down the dark road and you're only seeing a few feet in front of you, do you ever find yourself in a dead end where you say, uh-oh, and then you've got to throw it in reverse and back up out of there?
Not much. No, not so far, because I think perhaps because I have so much going on, I can always choose something where I am absolutely certain about what goes on. I don't think I've ever gone back. I think I did scrap something once, actually. I can't remember what it was, but I think maybe I'm moving too fast. You know, I was putting too much in ahead, and I thought, no, I need to do that more slowly. But no, gradually, you know, that is the other analogy that is lovely is in Stephen
I bow
King's.
down to you. I genuflect. I'm amazed.
It's worked 3 times, well, 4 times, but who knows if it will continue to work. I've just been very lucky. But in Stephen King's book on writing, he has this lovely analogy, which is it's like archaeology, that you find that uncovering the plot is like finding a bit of something sticking out of the sand, and you have to just move the sand away very, very slowly, very, very gently, you know, a little brush, you know, until, you know, you've got everything open, you know, you've uncovered it. And if you do it really carefully, you'll uncover it whole. And it's just a sort of lovely idea, I think, that and I do often feel that I'm just very carefully, you know, just sort of dusting away, you know, and hoping that what comes out is something worth having, I suppose.
Oh, I love that, Lynn. I love that. It's so comforting and heartening. Thank you. Welcome, Britt. Okay, let's get to some of these questions. Darlene would like to know, is this a standalone book?
No, it's the 3rd in a series. I mean, it does work as a standalone book. I'm sure you could read it without having read the others, but I think it benefits from having read the others because the characters are developing. Constable Twitten is learning more about everything, so it is quite a good idea to have read the others. I mean, have you read the others? You know, this is the first one you've read. Did you find it, you know,
I was able to jump in. I was able to jump right in it and read it as a standalone. And now I will go back and read the first 2 because now I want to see what came before.
Good. That's good. That's good to know. I mean, it's harder for me to judge, to be honest. But I think, you know, I think that obviously the plot is standalone. Yeah. And I think we learn enough background on everybody as we go that you don't have to have read the previous 2. No, I think that's true. That's
absolutely fair. This worked beautifully as my first Constable book.
Good.
And now I do want to go back and learn more. And I think it will actually be interesting for me to see the precursors to having read this one first. So I kind of like to jump in and then go back, but I'm also a person who sometimes peeks ahead. I have no self-control. So thank you for that question, Darlene. And thank you for that answer, Lynn. Karen would like to know, what authors inspire you? Yes, Lynn, tell us. You inspire us. Who inspires you?
Oh, so many. Oh, I never can answer this question. It's awful. I have so many favorite authors. So even in the crime area, I think the person I loved reading years ago was Carl Hiaasen, and I thought, well, there you are. You see, you can be funny, you can be mad funny, as he is. I mean, it's crazy funny, and still, you know, write a crime novel. So I think I took some, you know, some real courage from him. But you know, even in the crime world, there are just too many. Sorry, I'm sure that after we've spoken, I will think of the proper answer to that question. But I read a lot, and at the moment I've been reading, you know, just classics that I've missed, and I've just read a wonderful book, Larry McMurtry. Do you know the author Larry McMurtry, who he wrote Lonesome Dove is the sort of famous book, and it was 1,000-word, you know, 1,000-page book. I've been meaning to read it for like 35 years. You know, I've put it on the shelf. Someone told me 30 odd years ago that it was a wonderful book, and I just, you know, we're in lockdown. You know, it's a wonderful time to sit and read a really grippingly, beautifully written book like that, and it's a great odyssey, and it's wonderful characters, brilliant writing, very funny. But very moving as well. I mean, it's got everything. Great book. And it was sort of, you know, I'm recommending a cowboy book, but I didn't know it was going to be as good as that. I mean, it's just absolutely wonderful. So, I'm trying to, I think I'm quite, sort of open to different types of literature anyway. There is a lot of snobbery about all sorts of things and especially books, I think. And there are some people who would never dream of reading anything that was, say, a crime novel, because unless it was labeled as something else. But I very much, I've dealt with, in the past, I've written about sport and I've written about television and so on. So, you kind of, and you find what's there and you see what talent there is in all these, in different fields. And I think it's silly to have, sort of snobbish views, really. Anyway, yeah. So I do read all sorts of things, but I'm about to have a Chekhov binge as well. So I don't just read cowboy books.
I am loving this conversation from Chekhov to cowboys. This is all inclusive here. No, but it's so true, and I think it's important, and I do notice that literary, snobbery about various genres, be it cowboy books or be it crime fiction, and I'm not really sure why it exists, because all I want to do is read a great book that keeps me entertained, that sucks me in, and that's the experience that I want. So,
and that's well written, and that's really well written. Exactly. I mean, Larry McMurtry is a genius. As far as I know, I'm reading The Last Picture Show, which he also wrote. Beautiful writing. It's really great. But I'm sure he doesn't feature much in many British people's sort of canons. But he's great.
Absolutely. And another review that I want to share, this one from Simon Brett, who said of your writing, bringing the undoubted comic talents of Lynn Truss to crime fiction should be a marriage made in heaven. And that is exactly what it turns out to be. And so again, merging comedic writing, merging crime fiction, merging all of these things creates a great book, creates a really good read and a great story. And that's what we are here for. Anissa would like to know, what are some of your recent reads? Actually, you just answered the question with Larry McMurtry and about to have a Chekhov binge.
Yes.
And are you reading any mysteries lately, Lynn?
I've been reading some historical mysteries. I've been reading Nicola Upson, who writes. She's rather brilliant, and she writes. She's written a series. She's still writing a series in which the novelist Josephine Tey is a character. So Josephine Tey was a golden age sort of crime writer herself, and she wrote famously a book called The Daughter of Time, and also one called The Franchise Affair that's really quite famous, and there was a film of that. And so she was a very private kind of person. She wasn't that well known. She wrote plays under a male pseudonym. And Nicola Upson, I thought, oh, that sounds a bad idea. When I first heard about it, I didn't like the idea of it. I thought, oh. But when I started reading them, I was just so impressed that she uses the historical detail very well, very, very well, of the real things that Josephine Tey was involved in. So, she was involved in the theatre in London. So there's, and she had a famous play on in Drury Lane, and St. Martin's Lane. And the sort of sense of the period, she uses some real people in the plots, which is quite daring. And the plots are very good. And the role of Josephine, there's also a policeman who's an old friend of hers, who does most of the actual sort of detecting, but they're not they're not cheesy at all. I mean, they're good, solid, good books. And anyway, so I've read a few of those now. I just read The Ashes of London by Andrew Taylor, who is another historical, he writes historical crime. And I like Ellie Griffiths, who lives nearby. These are all British, aren't they? I've just noticed.
No, that's so good. We love
very
that.
British. And Mick Herron, who writes, he's got a great series, which are thrillers more than crime, I suppose, which are a very funny premise, which is that there's a sort of bunch of spies of sort of rather second-rate spies who've all done one of those things that you read about in the newspapers, like leaving a disc with important information on a train or something, and then they get the boot. But instead of actually sacking them because it would be too expensive, they're all sent to this kind of awful Siberia of a place, which is called Slough House. Which is its nickname. It's in London, but it might as well be in Slough, which is a horrible place. Well, I say that, I don't know it, but it's, you know, but anyway, that's his joke, not mine. And so they're called, the first one is called Slow Horses, because their nickname at Slough House is Slow Horses. And and then he's written many, I mean, about 7 or 8, I think, I'm not sure, and I've read them all. I mean, they're just really good read. They're marvelous stories. He kills off characters in a sort of Game of Thrones type of way, you know, sort of, oh no, I really liked him, you know, it is just going to kill. And he's just very good. So yeah, that's a few anyway. That's a few.
That is wonderful. And I love learning more about more, you know, British recommendations, because especially for us as a primarily American-based audience, although if anyone's listening internationally, please let me know. That's the only good thing about the pandemic, is now we're not limited by geography. So before we used to do in-person events, but now we do everything online. And so we often do get international listeners.
Yeah,
so
great.
let us know where you're listening from. Darlene says, thank you for letting me know. She's going to start with number 1 and progress along. Okay, Darlene, we'll see you in 3 books. I'm starting at number 2, going back. So Darlene will probably cross at number 2. Check in with me. Let me know how it's going. Joseph says, I teach your book, Eats, Shoots, and Leaves, in my writing classes, and I teach some of those same students in an honors fiction workshop. Can you say a little bit for me and for my writing students about how much of a role grammar and style play in your composing process? Joseph, you're reading my mind. You're a man after my own heart. Lynn, tell us about it.
Well, I think it is a sort of automatic thing for me. I think because I used to be an editor as well. So I suppose when I'm writing, I don't exactly, you know, for me, I'm thinking about the reader. I'm always thinking about, how is this for the reader? Do they understand where I'm going with this sentence, with this paragraph, with this chapter? And style and punctuation come into that very, very heavily. I mean, if you really want someone to follow your train of thought, which in my case is I mean, you have to really concentrate, I think, on my books. But I suppose that's a bad thing. Excuse me. But you know, one of the ways to do that is to make sure you put all the dots and dashes in that really help someone hear your voice, and follow your train of thought. And I think that not every reader listens to the prose. I don't think everyone does, but I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people can somehow hear it on the page. And I think that it really, really helps them as well. If you have rhythm in your sentences, if you have, you know, make it very clear where the emphasis of this sentence is, you know, and you do all that really by moving the words around till they're in the right order. So to give the right, you know, give yourself the best chance of being understood. Because that's why we write, is because we want to communicate a thought or an idea or something to another person. And I love doing radio. I do quite a lot of radio. And of course there, you can use your voice, and you can, you can put the emphasis exactly where you want it, and you can be as natural as you want. But on the page, you have to construct that artificially to make sure that the person on the other end is receiving as much of your intent as they can. So to me, you know, not to use punctuation, unless you're making a point about punctuation, which is fine. But if you are not making a point about punctuation, and you just want people to understand what you're saying, obviously use every tool at your command, and one of them is commas. You know, so there you are. That's what I would say.
Oh, Lynn, I love that answer. Joseph, thank you for your incredibly thoughtful, thought-provoking question. Lynn, thank you for your beautiful, heartfelt answer. And actually, I want to share just a quick story with our mighty mystery family today. So Lynn, unbeknownst to her, has played a huge role in my life, and and this is how. So 15 years ago, my now husband, who back then was just some guy I met in a bar, or in British parlance, some bloke I met in a pub. We actually had our second date. On our first date, he took me bowling, and on our second date, we went to Barnes and Noble, and we were wandering around, and I had, of course, heard about Lynn's book, which had, was blazing up the charts. And I said, oh my gosh, I have to buy this book. And he said, oh, what is it? And I told him, and he said, let's buy it together. And I thought, any man who loves grammar that much and who thinks that the title is funny, which I was just tickled and giddy over, is the man for me. And 2 years later, we got married. So Lynn has played a huge role in my life and in my love life, in my marriage, because that's how I knew this is the guy for me.
Oh, I'm very honored. I'm very moved. That's very lovely.
I love this book, and it's so funny. And now I know why, because Lynn, you're so funny. You're so funny. Gail is saying she is loving this. She said she's truly enjoying her British mysteries and having a cup of tea as she joins us. That sounds fantastic, Gail. Welcome, Kathleen. Welcome, Jean. Welcome, Barbara. Welcome, Claudia. Welcome, everybody. So any other questions for Lynn? We have time for just one more. And then I can't believe it, our time has run out, because I feel like we've just been chatting for a minute, but it turns out it's been 30 minutes, and Lynn has to get to her next interview. But if anyone has one last question for Lynn, we can squeeze it in. Oh, Margaret is saying she's just met someone who lived in Slough. Were they a slow horse?
I'm sure it's very lovely.
No, we've just spent a lot of time digging on poor Slough. But we're sure that your friend is good, Margaret. Lynn, what is one thing you want people to take from this book or feel when they read this book, besides wildly entertained?
Oh, no, nothing more than entertainment, really. I mean, I think, I like making, I research a lot. I research a lot into the period. I read a lot. I all the stuff about milk promotion that was going on, that was really going on. There are lots and lots of things in this that are based on reality. And I hope that sort of does come across, even though the plot, of course, is entirely fictional. But the past is so strange. And I think we kind of, we can sort of look backwards and imagine that we would have liked to live there or something. And it's very important to just remind people, just a little with detail, how different it was. And I really, so I think a certain sense of possibly just feeling grateful to be living now, possibly, but also, I mean, really just I just want them to have a nice time and to love the characters, because I suppose I've worked with these characters for quite a long time now, and because I wrote a radio series before the first book, so I've lived with these characters for quite a long time, and I love them more than ever now, having written these books, and I just want people to love them. But I suppose that's quite a tall order.
No, we do love them, and I think it's because you infuse all that heart and soul into the pages, and I think that is certainly felt by us as we read it. Gail saying thank you. Karen is saying thank you, Sarah and Lynn, for a lovely conversation. Thank you guys for joining us. Ooh, 2 more questions. How long did it take you to write this book?
Oh, well, actually, it's usually about 6 months. Each year is, because I've been writing one a year, and so the actual writing takes about 6 months, and then my editor, who is very, very good, will come back to me with some questions, which I always think, oh, why didn't I think of that? And then I do a complete rewrite, probably twice. So it takes up, the whole process takes up about 9 months, and then we're ready to go with the next. So the 4th book is already in production, and will come out next year. So that's already done, which is lovely.
Wow, congratulations, which leads me to our next question. Oh, and this is saying thank you so much. This has been a great chat. And our last question is, what are you working on now?
Well, I'm researching. I'm just researching for the next. So I don't actually know. And this is partly why I'm reading madly all sorts of things, because I'm not sure what the next one is. So yeah, I should know by now, but I don't.
No, and you know what? I just wanted to say about your research, because when I was reading it, I could tell that the milk promotion. I thought to myself, I bet that's 100% historically accurate. First of all, because anyone who writes a book about grammar is not going to be sloppy with the details or sloppy with the research. I bet I can trust Lynn Truss to get it right. But number two, because I think you're exactly right. History is so strange, and that's what I love about it, is unearthing strange, weird little details that are almost, too crazy to make up, and putting those into books is, I think, perhaps the most delicious part of all.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's lovely, isn't it? We're lucky. We're very lucky.
Lynn, you are amazing. I want to thank all of our mighty mystery friends for joining us. I truly have the best people here, and every week we're together on Tuesday afternoon. So I want to thank you all for joining us, all the regulars. Thank you all the new people for tuning in. Lynn, thank you for coming on and talking with us today. You are such a delight, and you are absolutely incredible. And it has been such a pleasure to host you here on Mighty Mysteries. I want to thank again Margaret Pinard, my partner in crime, my fellow author. She specializes in British and Scottish fiction. Historical fiction is what she writes. So thank you so much, Margaret. And Margaret is linking to our special partnership with bookshop.org, where you can buy Murder by Milk Bottle and its previous to its two precursors today, and support independent bookstores. So definitely click over and get your copy of these books. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time on A Mighty Mystery. Lynn, come back when book number 4 is out, will you?
I'd love to. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You've been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you, everybody. We'll see you right here next time on A Mighty Mystery, actually coming up at 4. Okay, see you soon.
Bye-bye.